Welcome to Tech in the Right Direction, the podcast. Let's take tech in the right direction to drive social change and close the employment, pay, and culture gap for women in technology. This podcast is focused on helping turn ideas into action and create opportunities for women to advance in the dynamic technology industry. I hope this podcast will inspire and motivate you to encourage more women and girls to seek or grow a career as a woman in technology. Stories about the journey of amazing women in the tech field starts right now. Welcome to Tech in the Right Direction, the podcast. This week, I'll be speaking with Supriya Gupta. As Credit Karma's head of recommendations, Supriya is charged with personalizing the Credit Karma app experience for the company's more than 120 million members. When she joined the team more than 3 years ago, Supriya oversaw the transformation of the company recommendations engine into a dynamic and personalized deep learning-based system that leverages data and machine learning to deliver tailored recommendations and offers to their members. This means members are served financial products, tools, and recommendations at the right time and that best adhere to their financial goals and ambitions. Under Supriya's leadership, Credit Karma's recommendation system has significantly grown and transformed over the years, and her team is doing more than 35 billion model predictions each day. Today, her business unit partners with nearly every team at Credit Karma and drives significant portion of revenue for the business. Prior to joining Credit Karma, Supriya worked in product at Facebook, where she led product strategy and development for a number of ad products. Supriya holds a BS and MS in electrical engineering from the University of Illinois and an MBA from the Wharton School of University of Pennsylvania. Welcome to the show, Supriya. I'm so excited to have you on.
Thanks, Jennifer. I'm really excited to be here as well.
Great, let's get started. So Supriya, as a woman in tech, can you share with us your career journey and how you got to where you are today?
Sure, yeah. So I started off my career, believe it or not, working on defense satellites as an engineer. Since then, my career has evolved quite a bit since then. I've always really valued working in an area that benefits society as a whole. But when I started off in defense, in engineering, I was really craving more of a setting where I could be much closer to the value we're generating for people and society. So this actually brought me to product from engineering. And since then, I've spent a vast majority of my career in product, working across a variety of different companies, with a few detours and stops along the way, including Wharton Business School, starting my own company, as well as a stint in management consulting. With each job change, I was always looking for two things. How am I creating value for society, and how I'm growing myself by gaining skills through new experiences, pursuing a variety of company stages, technical areas, and industries. And a culmination of these skills and experiences has brought me to Credit Karma, where I am today. I lead the recommendations business unit, which has over 100 people, includes product management as well as many other functions. And generally, this business unit is responsible for personalizing the experience for every single one of our 120 million members to help them make financial progress.
Wow, that's an impressive journey. Thank you for sharing that. So as a woman leader in tech, please share with us how you advocate for yourself and also think about other women in a male-dominated industry.
Yeah, so it's interesting being the head of specifically the recommendations business unit. It is always challenging to advocate for yourself generally, especially in a male-dominated industry like one like tech. And in my case, I am the business leader of arguably the most technical business unit at Credit Karma. So there's an extra layer of advocacy and proving myself in that context. And this materializes in different ways across the organization. Um, I've been in this position not only at Credit Karma, but pretty much every other company I've worked for, because I've always worked in this like technical area, having to balance bringing my technical acumen to the table along with my business know-how to the workplace for many years. So it manifests in two different ways, internally and externally. So on the internal side, in the technical organizations, it's really common for people to really focus on technical roles and the technical skill sets that provide value. But the business piece sometimes can be less obvious in terms of how it creates impact. So you can have the brightest minds, technical minds, the most brilliant engineers and data scientists who I work with every day, but it's really the business portion that helps paint the picture of what the vision is that we're trying to build, and ensures that the impact and effectiveness of those efforts actually come to fruition. So in some, there's no value in technical innovation if you can't actually execute it well and effectively to get the value that you want out of that innovation. So that's always like the internal struggle. And often people will look to me and assume that, oh, well, you're just the business person. So how are you adding value? And what do you know about technology? And then sort of the vice versa happens when you look externally. So on the internal side, you know, I've come across this so many times. I no longer take any sort of offense to this. It's usually a human instinct to assume if you're technical, you're probably not business savvy. If you're business savvy, you're probably not technical. Because there are not too many roles out there that really have to play to both sets of skills. So I know that my role in this way is quite unique. In fact, even in my early days as a PM, I remember someone trying to give me advice to actually make my slides look a little bit less polished, such that the engineers would actually take me more seriously. Because if it was too polished, they would assume that I don't know what I'm talking about. So I'd come across these sorts of things all the time. And sometimes I'd name drop my degrees like, hey, I have an MBA, I have a master's in engineering. And that would help sort of provide that, you know, instant credibility that helps with that shortcuts to those, you know, very human assumptions around what people can and cannot do. But I realized that I really needed to help really engage with those engineers by not only adjusting, say, my presentation style to something that they were used to so they'd be able to absorb the content, but also really engaging with them personally through working sessions and whiteboards, and really show them the value that I'm driving and show them how we can drive value together in a really measurable way.
I think you hit on a couple really good points here, that you know, business is driving tech today, and I think in the old days tech was driving business. And a lot of assumptions are that people don't have both tech and business, because that's kind of true. It's usually you're technical or you're business savvy. And to have both is such a great asset to the organization as well as to you. I mean, you have, you know, a lot of value that you bring to the table.
Yeah, and it's really interesting and energizing to be able to really marry those two backgrounds that I have in this really interesting, unique way. So, you know, when I think about this problem, I really kind of try to first not get offended, because I know it's actually strange. Second, I'm glad that I have those degrees to fall back on as shortcuts to provide credibility. But I really know that it's going to take more than probably that moment to prove myself amongst especially new stakeholders and people around the business, to understand how business can actually drive technology. As you mentioned, it's somewhat of a new thing, or newer thing, I'd say, in industry, for business to be driving the technology development.
So do you feel that with your teams you've built the credibility already, or do you have like a ongoing challenge to continue to build credibility in this male-dominated industry?
So I talked a little bit about looking internally, and I almost feel like that's the easier hill to climb, so to speak. Externally, when you talk with other leaders and executives, I think that's actually where the even bigger challenges land, in terms of holding a business leadership role in a technical context, because people outside of the organization actually are even less familiar with the technical challenges, as well as the complexities and nuance that you need to bake into the strategy in order to create differentiation, move really fast, and win in market. So with external stakeholders, I find that the education barrier is just a lot higher, especially combined with sometimes honestly lower interest levels, because you're talking mostly to people who are much more business oriented. So they're not going to necessarily get into the weeds of the technical domain. So that's where it gets a little bit more difficult to get that visibility and support from the broader business, because they just don't understand what you're doing. So it's hard to contextualize the impact that you're making relative to those efforts. So the way that I've dealt with this is really just trying to get the message right at multiple levels of depth, so that you're able to do a critical repetition of concepts in various degrees of depth to sort of slowly bring the organization along and create a constant drumbeat that provides that background context and foundational setting to help all the wins land in context as we're creating impact for the business.
I think that's really true in many cases, where repetitive training, I don't know if you want to call it training, but repetitive words is what makes things sink in. It doesn't happen just because you say it once, So I think that's really good. So data and AI are trending now in the tech industry. So how do you use data and AI to help consumers make better informed financial decisions?
Yeah, when it comes to Karma AI, I think it's all about demystifying the complexities of consumer finance. So, as a human, as one of our Credit Karma members, as is true for anybody, everyone's got their lives and they've got their goals, and how to get to those goals, or how to achieve those goals to attain financial progress, it's different for everyone. It's very personal, as is part of the phrase personal finance. And it really requires deep data-driven knowledge of where someone is today to understand how they can get to where they actually want to be in the context of what they're trying to achieve and under the conditions that they have. And so this is where I feel data and machine learning play a critical and necessary role to actually create this sophisticated, personalized financial platform that drives Credit Karma. And this is how we help consumers better understand what's going on with their finances and actually manage them on an ongoing basis. And this includes things like automating lengthy, tedious processes and decision making, even application flows and interaction points with financial institutions. So really, from the start, Credit Karma, our journey with data and AI really started with approval odds. And this is our ability to recommend products based on the chance that we predict that you will actually be approved for a particular financial product. And it's sort of grown into the full-blown recommendation system we have today that delivers these actionable insights and product recommendations. And so we've grown quite a bit, focusing on a few different things, really doubling, tripling down on pushing transparency and consumer choice out there, making that data available, providing certainty around the decisions these consumers are making every day about what products they want to take. Are they going to get approved? What are they going to get out of this? Are they going to get the amount of cash flow that they need out of these products to be able to achieve their goals, and simplifying all of that across the board. And data and AI really help us do that, right? Help us figure out how to recommend things in context of what the members actually want to try to achieve. And as an actual example of this, we introduced a product feature called Stories. And this is powered by our machine learning data science models. that parse through literally billions of data points to deliver these personalized, in-depth insights as well as recommendations to each of our members at scale, fully personalized. And they really pull together a tailored, digestible view of what each member's finances are and contextualize them and personalize them to the member's profile and goals. And then in this way, providing recommendations to improve their financial health and reach their financial aspirations. So that's how I see data and AI playing a very meaningful role in driving the company's mission and platform.
That's fascinating. So these stories, these billions of records that you've accumulated to, kind of get your data from, how long were you actually harvesting this information before you turned it into a story?
Yeah, this data, we collect data throughout our ecosystem. We partner with credit bureaus to understand people's credit profiles. And it's a lot of the data you'll see when you log into the app today, as well as we understand members throughout their life cycle on Credit Karma. What are the things they're doing on Credit Karma? What are the things they're doing with financial institutions that then gets sort of reported to us through the credit bureau data, et cetera. So really, it's for each member, it's really personalized. Is sort of the long and the short of it in terms of how much data we have. Just goes back to understanding the life cycle of the member, seeing how they've evolved historically, how people have evolved who are similar to them historically, and putting all of that data together to provide these recommendations.
That's great. Yeah, there's so many sources that it's coming from, which really helps the accuracy and the need for a lot of different types of data to make better predictions.
Yes, absolutely.
And then, yeah. You've grown model predictions 5 times. Please share with us what you attribute this tremendous growth to.
Well, certainly first and foremost, our amazing technology team that's definitely helped us along the way. But to also touch a little bit on our earlier conversation about business, I think a lot of the reason why the recommendations as a business area at Credit Karma has grown and performed so well is because of a lot of the business foresight that we have invested in. So specifically, you break down this 5X into a few different value drivers or product lines, so to speak. Our starting point several years ago was within offers, a few specific types of offers and a few specific types of recommendations. But over time, we've expanded to cover pretty much all the different offer types we have, 4 different product lines, including content, ecosystem, data, and all of which have wildly different business circumstances and implications for Credit Karma. And then looking to the future, we also aspire to personalize literally every pixel that our members experience with us in our ecosystem, and eventually enable autonomous finance, a little bit of what I talked about earlier in terms of automating away the complexities of personal finance through AI and data, and help members get to the optimal place with their financial goals in a personalized way. So we know that as a recommendations team, we need to make this happen. We will be a key enabler to making this future of the company happen. So if you zoom back, it was critical that we were looking a couple years ahead to know where the company was at. And so now you look at where we are today, and it was because of investments we made a couple of years ago, or started making a couple of years ago. We were ready for the business to grow in the way that it did, in the variety of trajectories it did, and able to sort of absorb all of this innovation and growth that we've been experiencing across all these different business areas. And then going forward, it's a similar note in terms of just continuously leaning on my strategic skill set around that foresight on how our company is going to evolve, and ultimately driving the strategy for our team from there is just really critical. So knowing what to build, when to build it, why we're building it, those are the things I'm focused on a day-to-day, and how I play a critical role on not only our team being able to build for success, but also accelerating Credit Karma as a whole, and always staying a few steps ahead in that way.
No, that's great. Wow. So thinking ahead, looking 2 years in the future and planning with your technology and innovation and growth 2 years back to get to where you want to get to is amazing. The technology is amazing, obviously. Your strategic mind and your combination of business and technology really helps foster this type of growth. And then obviously you have a great, great team.
Yes.
No, that's
that
great.
about sums it up for sure.
Yeah.
Did you know that there is an increase in the number of women leaving the tech industry? As a woman-owned business, Directions Training has made it our mission and passion to change this statistic. That's why Jennifer created this podcast. We showcase insight from everyday women for everyday women in the tech industry. Do you know other people that would benefit from tuning in? Share the link and help us drive the advancement of women in the tech industry. Do you have a journey or know of someone that our listeners would benefit from hearing about? Reach out to us at directionstraining.com/podcast. Don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and wherever you find your podcasts. Now, back to the show.
So, being a woman in tech, what challenges have you faced and how have you overcome some of them?
Yeah, when you think about being a woman in tech, I feel like more often than not, the first catchphrase that comes up usually is imposter syndrome. I talk about this with my mentees. I have a group of mentees that I mentor for the past couple of years now at Credit Karma. And I think about it for myself. And one of the things I realize is that imposter syndrome is not just something that's in your head or some sort of like, hey, lack of confidence or experience. A lot of times it's also an artifact of society in a lot of ways, because society will sort of dictate or have these implicit biases and assumptions about where people provide value versus not. And for women, a lot of times we are honestly underestimated in terms of the value we can bring to the table, versus men are often overestimated. And I do feel like a lot of that sort of contributes to that imposter syndrome feedback loop, and something that I know even with my mentees have expressed concerns about. So thinking about that context, one of the things that the challenges I faced is around just that, people understanding what I have to bring to the table, and how do I sort of, stay confident in my own skin, and confident knowing that I have the skills I know I have, and focus more on creating value out of those skills and less about, letting it get to me. So the way that I've kind of overcome all of this is really thinking about what are some of my more unique strengths and how can I uniquely create value in organizations. I think my journey to leading the recommendations team is actually a very interesting example of that. So when I moved into this leadership role I have today on the recommendations team, my predecessor, who was my hiring manager, she moved on to a new role, but she noticed of many skills in me, but particularly my knack for collaboration, and recognize that as an important key strength area for me to take on this leadership challenge, as well as generally platform roles like this. So my specifically approachability, ability to work well with others outside of my core business unit is actually not only why the recommendations team is so successful in powering our entire product amongst all these different vertical teams, it's also sort of critical that we do this. So in tech in particular, you can sometimes see a lot of internal organizations almost working against each other, or just focused on their own little silos. But when you think about the bigger picture, Credit Karma, we are a customer-obsessed fintech, and our customers really our 120 million members, not our exec teams that we're trying to, present to and get attention from. All of us are working together, including our execs, to deliver value to our members. And so in order to really achieve that mentality, truly, leaders really need to encourage a collaborative environment. And I realized that I was actually a bit of a unique person in that way in terms of my leadership style. So instead of falling prey to maybe some imposter syndrome of growing in my career, I decided, this is an advantage to me and it's a unique advantage in this role. And I knew it's going to be very critical to me and my team to be the glue that binds all of our teams at Credit Karma together to jointly deliver value for our members, who are our collective customers at the end of the day, and the future success of our business.
That's amazing. I think we can all learn from that. Really, really good insights there. So, can you share any lessons learned or leadership skills that you've learned in your career? Obviously, you've come a long way, and you've learned, you understood your strengths and then applied them internally and externally. But what, does any lessons learned come to mind, or a leadership skill that you said, wow, without this, I would not be where I am?
Yeah, I have a few related items that kind of work together in the way that I drive impact through my team and sort of capitalize on the notion of us being a platform and driving impact. So I'll start with trust. So first, it is imperative for teams, especially high-tech teams, to create an environment of trust, because innovation flourishes in these types of environments where ideas are received well and they're received without judgment. So people can go experiment, come up with new out-of-the-box ideas, really feel comfortable airing out their ideas and opinions. And in order to create this environment of trust, I think one of the ways to do that is really by leading with transparency, sort of setting the right sort of example from a leadership perspective to create a healthy environment about being highly transparent about what goals are, what matters, how things are going, both wins and losses, so that people understand that it's all about being transparent and not necessarily always being right. So it's really important that leaders bring people along for the journey as we all learn together and innovate together. And there will be moments when things go wrong, or say as a leader even, you make a wrong decision. And it's more important to surround yourself with people who are very comfortable with telling you, hey, maybe you should consider a different approach. Hey, there are some risks here that you might not be aware of. And other things like this, where they can really push you and up-level your thinking. And I find that to be really important in terms of the people I hire, leaders I keep close to me. And with that, I think it's really important for us to not only have people push on when things are wrong at the forefront, but also think through where things did go wrong and what can we learn from them, right? Every misstep, every challenge that we come across, every stumbling block is an opportunity to learn. And it shouldn't be an opportunity to blame. It is an opportunity to learn. So creating an environment where expectation is stuff will happen. We're scaling, we're growing, we're moving at breakneck speeds, but that shouldn't stifle innovation. That should be opportunities to learn, become stronger, and scale ourselves. And so if you bring all of these things together, it's really about focusing on impact, making sure that we are really focused on creating value, which is why we all come to work every day. It's really easy to get caught up in shipping and having this internal view of the world to ensure people are doing their jobs and creating the widgets, so to speak. But what is much more satisfying motivating, productive really is the focus on impact that our products are creating by shipping them, not just shipping products in isolation. And so you have these right incentives. You've also reinforced a lot of these other themes around innovation, transparency, and really capitalizing on the silver linings of our past mistakes to learn and keep growing.
I love the leadership skills that you mentioned, from trust to leading with transparency. You don't always have to be right. Surrounding yourself with people who help you grow, are not just all the same, because diversity in your teams is so important to be able to grow and learn. And then, learning is part of missteps. Like you said, if you didn't have missteps, you wouldn't learn, you wouldn't grow, you wouldn't have experience. So I love what you said about, not looking to blame, but learning as part of the opportunity, because that's huge. I mean, it's really, really important that people understand that everybody makes mistakes. I mean, we're all human, and we should learn from our mistakes, because those are opportunities to grow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
Those are really, really huge.
Great points. Thank you so much for that. All right. So, in closing, what comments or advice do you have for our listeners, or maybe women that are looking to come into tech?
Yeah, I think it's interesting for women who are starting in their careers, especially as leaders. So a little bit of advice for women in tech, those who are maybe trying to work their way up the ladder.
Mhm.
I think leadership is actually a skill you learn along the way. And the skills you need as an individual contributor are not always the same. Actually, most of the time they're quite different as those
Mhm.
that you would need in a manager role or management role or leadership role. And if they don't come to you naturally at first, don't be discouraged. It's something that most everyone is always working on. And as long as you have that growth mindset that probably got you to where you are today, you continue to maintain that as you move into leadership roles. Just remember, acknowledge, accept, that everyone has these growth areas and commit to growing in those areas. And to add to this, for me personally, I have a peer set of other leaders who work in completely different industries and functions that I lean on to get perspective from, and they lean on me. And so what I find often is learning or seeking out advice for people, quote unquote, inside the building that actually work with you. Sometimes you can be prey to groupthink, and sometimes it's just difficult to talk about tricky scenarios in various leadership capacities as well, especially if they're confidential. So I've actually found that third-party perspectives that are sort of outside of my current domain are really important, because it validates approaches and challenges from an objective perspective.
Mhm.
And when it comes to approaching growth in your career as a leader, there's often a lot more commonality amongst these different roles and functions. And you might actually be quite surprised that you could actually find highly valuable support from
Mhm.
soundboarding from different people that are simply in different functions, but happen to have a similar place in life or in their careers in terms of leadership. And those variety of perspectives could actually help get to more objective places in terms of developing a POV as you continue to work in these human charge scenarios as being a leader often is.
Yeah, that's great advice. And obviously, something you've learned over time. And I love that, skills change and they continue to grow over time, whether you're an individual contributor or moving into a leadership role. But I always say, be kind to yourself and don't give up. You just need to keep working at it, continuous learning. growth mindset, like you said, is so important. And then have a group that you can lean on, which was really critical because you can't do it by yourself. So great, great advice for our listeners and women maybe looking to get into the tech world. Supriya, this was such an honor to have you on the show. I am so excited that we got a chance to talk. Hope to have you on a future show someday.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
So Supriya, if our listeners wanted to get a hold of you, what's the best way to do so?
Yeah, please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Great. Thank you. Again, it was a pleasure and an honor. Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to Tech in the Right Direction. Please take a minute to subscribe or follow so that you never miss an episode. Also, don't forget to like, share, and comment. Thank you. See you next week.
From IT skill enhancements to end user adoption training, Directions Training is your resource to help optimize the effectiveness of your technology investments. Over 500,000 students have taken advantage of our wide selection of technology and business training solutions covering the most popular applications today, such as Microsoft 365, Azure, Windows 10, and more. As a podcast listener, we invite you to take advantage of an exclusive offer. Receive 30 days of free access to our Microsoft official curriculum on-demand courses for IT professionals or end users. Visit us at www.directionstraining.com/podcast to claim this offer today. Hurry, this offer is only available for a limited time. Success is a journey. Ask for directions.